And welcome back to This Week. I'm pleased to be joined by Tennessee 5th District Congressman Jim Cooper. Nice to see you as always, sir.
Good to be with you, Bob.
Good holidays?
Oh, yeah. It was good.
Getting ready for the new year, getting ready for you to head back to Washington, the legislative session. As you looked at 2012, what's going to be your priority as you go back to Washington?
Well, I'm excited because a lot of the issues I've cared about for a long time, like deficit reduction, are first and foremost. Now, finally, most of my colleagues and most of the nation are talking about it. You know, for a long time, people really didn't care about these issues, and now they do, and I'm thankful for that.
You've been talking about deficit reduction and reducing the debt for 20 years or more, and as you said, we're kind of forced to do it now. Talk a little bit about ways to do that. Are you for a balanced budget amendment? Would it work for the federal government the way it works here in Tennessee? Would that be a good first step?
I'm for the balanced budget amendment, and I voted for it again this year. Unfortunately, it did not pass, but even if it had passed, it won't kick in fast enough to save us. We're going to have real spending reduction earlier than that because a constitutional amendment takes several years to phase in. It's going to take an awareness on the part of all of our citizens as to the sources of our deficit problem. A lot of folks don't realize that a lot of the government spending they're against actually benefits them personally. So we're going to have to figure out a way to get real about our deficit numbers, and Congress has failed to get real about these numbers.
And that seems to be the logjam. Where do you make these cuts? What programs go away or get reduced? And as you've talked about before, kind of everything has to be on the table. Defense spending looks at Medicare, Social Security, while you're gutting the programs, but maybe cuts to those programs.
There can't be any sacred cows. We've got to look at everything in federal spending to cut out the waste, fraud, and abuse. And then some genuine spending is going to have to be cut because we've grown beyond our means, and that doesn't work for long.
You've been in Washington. You've seen how it works. How do you get beyond the partisan divide that's up there to get something accomplished? Some say partisan politics is needed, that the philosophy should be debated back and forth. But when it comes to the point where partisan politics stops action from happening, how do you get past that?
I try to live by the golden rule. That should be very simple. It should be something that everybody tries to do. Treat others as you want to be treated yourself. If you just do that, you'll overcome the partisanship that's affected Washington, and I'm afraid is infecting more regional states like ours, too. Just before the recess, Congress did approve a temporary continuation of the payroll tax deduction for the next 2 months. That's going to be a big debate once you go back. Do you feel it is needed? It is a tax increase, which Republicans say they don't want to do if it is taken away. On the other hand, it does take away some of the income for Medicare and Medicaid. Well, the end of February is going to be a big date, not only considering the extension of the payroll tax cut, but also other measures such as the debt ceiling increase. That comes up again. So there are a lot of major national economic issues on our plate right at the same time that Europe is almost collapsing, and we have other economic problems in our own economy, a shortage of jobs, a shortage of real opportunities for our young people and our older people to work productively. As you know, we're in the midst of a presidential campaign. How much does that hinder, as it were, the work in Washington, trying to get something accomplished as the partisan divide takes place on the presidential campaign trail? The closer you get to an election, the harder it is to be sensible and substantive about legislation. Now, it shouldn't be that way, but already we've seen the Iowa caucuses, already the hoopla and the campaigning and the negativity. I wish people would just relax, calm down, and focus on substance, because we live in the greatest country on earth. Let's keep it that way. And surely men and women of goodwill can work together to make that happen. As a Democrat, you're obviously watching what's taking place on the Republican who the president will go against in November. The first votes are in. The Iowa caucuses are over with. Mitt Romney wins by about 8 votes over Rick Santorum, about as close as you can get. Ron Paul in third. Does this win on the field? Michelle Bachmann's already out. Does it make it a 3-person race now, do you think, for that GOP nomination? Well, it looks like Santorum and Paul are both very strong, and both unexpectedly strong, because previous candidates had been strong earlier in this cycle. But the real winner in Iowa is anybody but Romney. There seems to be deep Republican resistance to Romney. I personally think he's a very admirable person, but he seems unable to break through the 25% threshold, and that's going to make it very hard for him to capture the Republican nomination, much less win in November. 8 years ago, Iowa was the key to President Obama's victory. A big win there kind of skyrocketed him. Going to do the same thing for Mitt Romney on the Republican side this time. Well, he certainly seems well positioned in New Hampshire, but he has kind of home field advantage there. The real test, I think, is going to be in South Carolina coming up. Here locally, redistricting plans are out by the state legislature every census year. The party in charge gets to redraw the districts. They're doing that in the state level and the congressional level. We haven't seen your district yet, but it looks like this afternoon we may get a peek of it. The rumor on the street is Davidson County, a good part of your district, may be chopped up into 3 different districts. Bad idea? I certainly hope they don't chop up Davidson County. It's not about me. This is about the Andrew Jackson district. I just am the fortunate person who gets to represent this wonderful district for the time being. For 200 years plus, this district has been unified and together. To chop it up would be real gerrymandering, and I hope that doesn't happen. Looking at the state,
through the eyes of the legislature. They're trying to create fair districts as possible, and yet the party in power is the party who's going to draw the districts, and they're going to obviously have advantages that they have the votes.
Well, the Republican Party today is at a 140-year high point in Tennessee in terms of power, but still a majority of Tennesseans are not Republicans. They're independents or Democrats. So I'm hopeful that we'll put partisanship aside, try to do this the fair and way, because that's the way most Tennesseans are. They want a fair and decent deal.
5th District Congressman Jim Cooper, always nice to speak with you and nice to see you again, sir. Happy New Year.
Thank you, Bob. Always good.
Stay with us. This week continues in a moment.